Hello and welcome. My name is Nasir Hafizi and I am a solicitor by profession. I also bake fresh cream cakes. In today's legal presentation, I'm going to discuss the important topic of when can you make a lawful citizen's arrest. And the key word here is lawful. In short, I'm going to be asking, when is a citizen's arrest lawful and when is a citizen's arrest unlawful? And hopefully by the end of the presentation you will be better informed. Even though the words citizen's arrest does not feature in any statute, the phrase citizen's arrest simply means here an arrest by a person who is not a police officer. This presentation will, I hope, be useful to clarify the law around citizen's arrest, what people can and cannot do. So I hope the presentation will be useful for the following: individuals who carry out citizen's arrest, citizens on parole, neighbourhood watch volunteers and coordinators, store detectives, door staff supervisors, commuters, public sector workers like doctors, nurses and teachers, members of the public, and individuals who have been subject to a citizen's arrest. I have separated this presentation into 6 parts. In the first part, I'm going to run through several common scenarios where citizen's arrest may arise. In the second part, I strike a cautionary note about a person thinking about carrying out citizen's arrest, and in particular the dangers of falling on the wrong side of the law. In the third part, I will explain the 4 legal tests that make a lawful citizen's arrest. I'm going to explain section 24A of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. In the fourth part, I will explain citizen's arrest in relation to breach of the peace. In the fifth part, I will explain 2 key differences between a citizen's arrest and the powers of the police to arrest. In the sixth part, I will provide what I hope is some useful practical advice about carrying out lawful citizen's arrest to help you be on the right side of the law. I want you to remember 3 very important points, and please bear these points in mind long after you have watched and listened to this presentation. Firstly, always seek specialist legal advice and training to find out your legal rights and legal responsibilities in relation to citizen's arrest and other areas of law. Secondly, if you are considering carrying out a citizen's arrest, always remember that your safety and the safety of those around you is paramount. Do not endanger your safety and put yourself in harm's way by carrying out a citizen's arrest unless you reasonably believe it is safe, lawful, and the circumstances compel you to act. But please don't have a gung-ho attitude. This is not the Wild West. And thirdly, if you're in a neighbourhood watch group, work with the local neighbourhood police teams and your neighbours, businesses and local centres to keep your local area and public safe. Let me now turn to part 1. I want to begin by posing 12 common scenarios which I hope you can relate to, or at least to some of them. I will be returning to these scenarios during the presentation and applying the law to them, so please pay careful attention. Scenario 1. Imagine you see a person entering your neighbour's car in broad daylight. You come out of your home and approach the person who is in your neighbour's car, trying to take out a sat-nav. Can you carry out a citizen's arrest? Scenario 2. Imagine you are walking down a path and you see a person on a bike take a mobile phone from another person using force. Can you carry out a citizen's arrest? Scenario 3. Imagine you are at home. You hear loud noises downstairs. You go downstairs and you see a stranger in your kitchen rummaging through your kitchen cupboards. You shout at the person who does not have permission to be in your home. The person runs out of the front door. Can you carry out a citizen's arrest? Imagine you're walking your dog in your local neighbourhood late at night. There have been a spate of burglaries in the area. As you pass a house with an alarm going off, you see a person walking with a hood over their head and a bag in their hand. Can you carry out a citizen's arrest? Scenario 5. Imagine a person riding a moped over the speed limit in your area. You ask the moped rider to stop and eventually they do. Can you carry out a citizen's arrest of the rider for the road traffic offences of speeding and careless driving? And would your answer be different if they had damaged a nearby car or ran over a pedestrian? Scenario 6. Imagine you are in your local convenience store. You see a person take a chocolate box and put it in their pocket and walk out the store. Can you carry out a citizen's arrest? Imagine, scenario 7, imagine you are in a clothes shop. You see a person cut the security tag off with scissors. Can you carry out a citizen's arrest? Would your answer differ if there was a nearby police officer present? Scenario 8, imagine watching from your front window across the street an abusive slanging match between your neighbours. You are worried the situation might become worse, turning into a full-blown fight. Can you carry out a citizen's arrest? Scenario 9. Imagine from your bedroom window you see a person walking on the street late at night. You see the person carrying a large screwdriver. You don't see him using the screwdriver. Can you go outside and carry out a citizen's arrest on the person for burglary? Scenario 10. Imagine you find your laptop stolen. You suspect a work person who attended your home the week before committed the burglary. Can you go to the work person's home and carry out a citizen's arrest? Scenario 11. Imagine you carry out a citizen's arrest on a person who has thrown a brick and damaged your window. When you carry out the citizen's arrest on the person, what do you say to the person? And what do you do next? Scenario 12. Imagine you carry out a citizen's arrest on a person who has tried to steal your car keys. You detain the person. The person struggles to be released. How much force can you use to detain the person before the police arrive? So, we have various scenarios. Let me look at the law and ask the question, can you carry out a citizen's arrest? But before I do so, let me now turn to part 2, striking a cautionary note. It is important to remember some basic principles. Firstly, everyone is at liberty to go about their lawful day-to-day business without unlawful interference from the state or anyone for that matter. Secondly, whilst the law does allow a person's liberty to be restricted, this can only be done in certain legal circumstances and situations. Thirdly, if a person acts, however honourably or with the best of intentions, outside the law to restrict someone else's liberty, they open themselves up to the possibility of criminal offences and civil sanctions. So, be very, very careful in exercising or thinking of exercising a citizen's arrest. Having said this, the law does give the power in very limited circumstances to carry out a citizen's arrest. Let me now turn to part 3. When can you make a lawful citizen's arrest according to section 24A? According to section 24A of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, PACE, for a lawful citizen's arrest, your actions must meet the following 4 legal tests. To summarise, you should be asking yourself the following 4 questions. 1. Does your citizen's arrest fall into one of 4 situations? 2. Is the offence an indictable offence that is serious enough to qualify for a citizen's arrest? 3. Is your citizen's arrest necessary? And 4. Is there no police officer available to carry out the arrest? Let me explain each test in turn. The first test is about whether your citizen's arrest falls into one of 4 situations. Section 24A of PACE says this, and I'm going to read it in full, then break it down into each of the 4 situations and give examples. Section 1. A person other than a constable, that means a civilian, may arrest without a warrant. A. Anyone who is in the act of committing an indictable offence. That's situation 1. B. Anyone whom he has reasonable grounds for suspecting to be committing an indictable offence. That's situation 2. Section 2. Where an indictable offence has been committed, a person other than a constable may arrest without a warrant. A. Anyone who is guilty of the offence. That's situation 3. Or anyone whom he has reasonable grounds for suspecting to be guilty of it. That's situation 4. Take some time looking at that slide by pausing the presentation if you like. Let's now turn to look at the 4 situations in some detail when a citizen's arrest can be made and give example of each situation. Situation 1. Section 1A says a person other than a constable may arrest without a warrant A. Anyone who is in the act of committing an indictable offence. So for example, remember scenario 1 earlier? Imagine you see a person enter your neighbour's car in broad daylight. You come out of your home and approach the person who is in your neighbour's car trying to take out the sat-nav. Can you carry out a citizen's arrest? Answer, yes, subject to the other tests being met. In this case, the person is in the act of committing an offence of theft of your neighbour's sat-nav. Let's look at situation 2. Section 1B. Person other than a constable may arrest without a warrant anyone whom he has reasonable grounds for suspecting to be committing an indictable offence. So for example, remember scenario 2? Imagine you're walking down a path and you see a person on a bike take a mobile phone from another person using force. Answer, yes. If you have reasonable grounds for suspecting the person is committing a robbery and subject to the other test being met. Let's look at situation 3. Section 2A says, where an indictable offence has been committed, a person other than a constable may arrest without a warrant anyone who is guilty of the offence. So for example, remember scenario 3, imagine you're at home, you hear loud noises downstairs, you go downstairs and you see a stranger in your kitchen rummaging through your kitchen cupboards, you shout at the person leaves by the front door. Can you carry out a citizen's arrest? Answer, yes, subject to the other tests being met because the person has committed a burglary. Let's look at situation 4. Section 2B says, where an indictable offence has been committed, a person other than a constable may arrest without a warrant anyone whom he has reasonable grounds for suspecting to be guilty of it. So for example, remember scenario 4? Imagine you're walking a dog in your local neighbourhood late at night. There's been a spate of burglaries in the area. As you pass a house with an alarm going off, you see a person walking with a hood over their head and a bag in their hand. Can you carry out a citizen's arrest suspecting the person of having committed a burglary? Answer, yes, subject to the other tests being met because you have reasonable grounds for suspecting the person has committed a burglary. However, let's hope the person doesn't turn out to be the innocent neighbour's son or daughter, because in such cases mistakes can easily be made. There may be some explaining to do, not just to the innocent person arrested, but also possibly via court action against you for falsely imprisoning and detaining an innocent person. The second test that needs to be met before you think about carrying out a citizen's arrest according to section 24A is the offence an indictable offence that is serious enough to qualify for citizen's arrest? The law says that a citizen can only arrest a person for indictable offence. An indictable offence is a serious offence which can be dealt with at the Crown Court. So, for example, offences that can be dealt with at the Crown Court include theft, burglary, robbery, dangerous driving, criminal damage, assault occasioning actual bodily harm. There are some offences, however, that can only be dealt with at the Magistrates' Court, which deals with less serious offences and therefore don't qualify for a citizen's arrest under section 24A. Examples include no insurance, no MOT, no licence, careless driving, common assault. So, for example, imagine you see a person riding a moped over the speed limit in your area. You ask the moped rider to stop and eventually they do. Can you carry out a citizen's arrest of the rider for the road traffic offence of speeding or careless driving? The answer is no, not according to section 24A. Speeding and careless driving are not indictable offences that can be tried in a Crown Court. The answer would be different if the driving or riding was dangerous, that is, missed a pedestrian or hit a wall. Then it would qualify, arguably, for a citizen's arrest, subject to the other tests being met, as this would be dangerous driving, an indictable offence that can be tried in the Crown Court. And just to add, I think the police and the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, would look sympathetically if you mistakenly arrest a person for a non-indictable offence, a less serious offence, in this case careless driving, but that should not make you complacent. The third test to think about before carrying out a citizen's arrest is, do you have reasonable grounds for believing that the arrest is necessary? And the necessary criteria is considered in this way by the law: to prevent the person in question A. causing physical injury to himself or any other person, B. suffering physical injury, C. causing loss of or damage to property, or D. making off before a constable can assume responsibility for him. So, for example, imagine you are in a local convenience store. You see a person take a chocolate box and put it in their pocket and walk out the store. Can you carry out a citizen's arrest? The answer, subject to the other test being met, is yes, because you are trying to prevent loss of property, in this case the chocolate box, to the convenience store owner. The final test and question to be asked before carrying out a citizen's arrest under section 24A is this: is there no police officer available to carry out the arrest? A citizen's arrest is only lawful if it appears to the person making the arrest that it is not reasonably practicable for a police officer to make it instead. So, for example, in the scenario, imagine you're in a clothes shop. You see a person cut the security tag with scissors. There is a police officer nearby who doesn't see what the person did. Can you carry out the citizen's arrest? The answer is, assuming it's practicable to speak to the police and report it to them before the person leaves the store, the answer is no. You should first speak with the police officer and report the matter to them and let them carry out the arrest. To summarise then, when it is lawful under Section 24A to carry out a citizen's arrest. 1. Your citizen's arrest must fall into one of four situations. The person is in the act of committing an offence. You suspect the person of being in the act of committing an offence. The person has committed an offence. Or you suspect the person has committed an offence. 2. The offence is an indictable offence that is serious to qualify for a citizen's arrest. 3. Your citizen's arrest is necessary. And 4. There is no police officer available to carry out the arrest. Let me now turn to part 4, explaining citizen's arrest in the context of preventing a breach of the peace. Civilians, like police officers, also have quite far-reaching broad common law, that is judge-made powers of arrest where there is a breach of the peace. A breach of the peace is a behaviour of a person involved causing a police officer or a citizen to believe that 1. A breach of the peace had or would occur, and that 2. It related to harm which was actually done or likely to be done to a person or in his or her presence and their property. Actual harm includes an assault, public disorder or other disturbances, or an imminent harm of an assault, public disorder or other disturbances. So a citizen's arrest can be carried out if A. A breach of the peace is committed in their presence, B. The person effecting the arrest reasonably believes that such a breach will be committed in the immediate future by the person arrested, or C. A breach of the peace has been committed, or the person effecting the arrest reasonably believes that a breach of the peace has occurred and that a further breach is threatened. So, for example, imagine watching from your front window across the street an abusive slangy match between your neighbours. You are worried that situation might become worse and a fight is likely to occur. Can you carry out a citizen's arrest? Answer, arguably, no, because it's not done in your immediate presence. What if you were outside and the abusive slanging match between your neighbours was in your presence? Can you carry out a lawful citizen arrest? Well, that's a challenging question. Legally, you would need to think first, is there no other alternative to arrest and prevent the breach, for example, through mediation, e.g. calming both neighbours down over a cup of hot cocoa? But what if there isn't that option because the breach of the peace has occurred or is imminent? Then arguably yes, you could lawfully arrest because the abusive behaviour has breached the peace. However, who do you arrest? One or both neighbours? And how safe is that option for you? And will the arrest make the situation worse, not just at that moment, but for you and in the future? Once again, let me reiterate, extreme caution should be taken before making such an arrest, because if the arrest is not lawful, then you could be arrested and be criminally liable for an offence of false imprisonment or assault or both. Therefore, remember, only carry out a citizen's arrest if your belief and actions are objectively reasonable, and of course it is safe to do so. Let me now turn to part 5, comparing police powers of arrest to citizen's arrest. I want to do this to give an insight into how much wider the powers of the police are and how limited the police powers of arrest for citizens are. Let me give 3 key differences. Firstly, a police officer can arrest a person for any offence, whether it is a serious indictable offence or not. A citizen can only arrest for indictable offences or serious offences. The second difference is this: a police officer can arrest a person who is about to commit an offence. A citizen cannot. A citizen, if you recall, can only arrest in those limited 4 situations contained in Section 24A. In short, when you see a person in the act of committing an offence, or has committed an offence, or you have reasonable grounds to suspect that a person is committing an offence or has committed an offence. You will see on the slide a reminder of section 24A. Take the example. Imagine from your bedroom window you see a person walking on the street late at night. You see the person carrying a large screwdriver. You don't see him using the screwdriver. Can you go outside and carry out a citizen's arrest on the person for burglary? The answer is no, but a police officer could, because for the citizen no offence of burglary has been committed or being committed. But what about arresting the person for going equipped to steal? Legally, this is possible subject to the other tests being met. But remember the dangers of wrongful arrest in cases of mistake. And the third key difference between the powers of the police to arrest and the limited powers of the citizen to carry out an arrest is highlighted in this example. And it's all about a question of timing of the citizen's arrest. Imagine you find your laptop stolen. You suspect a work person who has attended your home a week before committed the burglary. Can you go to the work person's home and carry out a citizen's arrest? The answer is arguably no. Section 24A should be read as a whole, only giving a lawful citizen's right of arrest at the time or shortly after the offence has occurred, when it is necessary to prevent the disposal of the laptop taken and a police officer is not available. Therefore, the longer the period between the time of the offence and the arrest means the less likely it is necessary and the more likely a police officer will be available to carry out the arrest. You may feel the police have limited resources to act on your complaint. Unfortunately, you will be hard-pressed to convince a court that your act of a citizen's arrest was necessary a week later. The proper course of action is to report the matter to the police so they avail themselves to consider arresting the person you have made a complaint against, but also for them to consider a house search, which civilians don't have the power to do in law. Let me now turn to the final part, part 6, practical advice. Let me provide you with my top 8 pieces of practical advice in carrying out citizen's arrest. Practical advice 1. Only carry out a citizen's arrest if it's safe for you to do so. I've said this throughout this presentation and I reiterate it again. Practical advice 2. Only carry out a citizen's arrest in accordance with the law, the 4 legal tests in section 24A, and the law as applied to preventing a breach of the peace. Think about the law and your safety as the yellow brick road. If you follow it, it will lead you back home safely. Practical advice 3. Only carry out a citizen's arrest if there is no police officer present. It's important to check that there is no possibility of a police officer doing the job instead. Practical advice 4. Use reasonable force, not excessive force. Any force used should only be necessary and proportionate. Avoid punching or kicking a person in the act of an arrest, as this may be viewed as excessive force, and definitely do not do so if the arrested person is already compliant and subdued. Excessive force is an arrest. In an arrest amounts to an assault. Practical advice 5. What do you say to a person you have arrested? Well, there's no form of communication according to law with an arrested person, but it's strongly advised to avoid any misunderstanding in what is a tense situation, to communicate with the person arrested basic information. Your name, that they are under citizen's arrest, what offence they are suspected of committing. If you have used force in the arrest, that it was reasonable force to detain them until the police arrive, and that you will be contacting the police to place them in their custody. So you could say, for example, my name is John Wayne. I've carried out a citizen's arrest on you. I suspect you have committed a burglary. I've used reasonable force to carry out the arrest. I'm now contacting the police to put you in their custody. Practical advice 6. Always call the police immediately after the citizen's arrest. Don't delay, or else there may be a claim the next day. The longer you leave, placing the arrested person in police custody could expose you to a complaint of kidnap and false imprisonment. Make sure anyone arrested is transferred to the police as soon as possible. Practical advice 7. Be prepared to justify the arrest to the police and expect the police to take a statement from you. So know your legal rights and your legal responsibilities concerning the lawfulness of citizens' arrest. Practical advice 8. Avoid citizens' arrest on your own. This is because if the person you have arrested later tries to suggest that you have assaulted them or caused them some other wrong, e.g. damage to their phone, you don't want to find that it is your word against theirs. If you have recorded the encounter, then keep a copy. And my final few words are these. Please know your legal rights. Please know your legal responsibilities. Please stay safe. Please feel free to contact me if you want legal training in this area and other areas I specialise in. Please speak to a specialist lawyer if you need legal advice. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Community Legal Education. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you in advance for sharing this video. And may the justice be with you.